Hello, and welcome to EURAXESS Smart Talks.
The Smart Talks podcast series is an EU-funded EURAXESS project which provides information and assistance to researchers at any career stage.
EURAXESS supports the EU research area in its ambition to create a single borderless market for research, innovation and technology in the EU.
We support researchers in mobility, careers within and outside academia, innovation and entrepreneurship.
We strive to increase scientific collaboration between Europe and the world. Hi, I'm Daria, a senior expert at EURAXESS National Contact Point in Latvia.
And I'm Jovan, a teaching and research assistant from the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering in Niš, Serbia.
And you are listening to the EURAXESS Smart Talks podcast. Joining us today, Dr. Antonino Puglisi, a Chartered Chemist and member of the Royal Society of Chemistry with over 20 years of international experience in research and innovation. His work spans academia, industry, and public institutions with expertise in analytical chemistry, formulation science, and strategic development. Antonino is known for his interdisciplinary approach and ability to lead complex projects that bridge science, policy, and technology. Get ready for a conversation that explores the power of research mobility alongside chemistry. So, hello, Nino.
Hi, Daria. Hello, everyone. Thank you for the glowing introduction there.
Welcome. So, to start, could you briefly introduce yourself, explain your current research or professional role?
Oh, great. So, Daria, as you said, my name is Antonino Puglisi, and many people know me simply as Nino. I'm a chemist by trade, as you said, and I've been a researcher for most of my professional career, both in industry and in academia, across different countries, from my native Italy to the UK, where I live now, but I also was for a time in Austria and in Turkey. I currently work at UKRI, which is the UK National Funding Agency, UK Research and Innovation. I work as what is called a European advisor. Basically, I help the UK government, the UK stakeholders to engage with Horizon Europe, with the European funding opportunities. I'm also the UK national contact point for the ERC, the European Research Council.
Good. And regarding mobility, what was your very first experience with research mobility and what motivated you to take that step?
Yeah. Actually, my first experience with research mobility came quite late, relatively speaking, in my career. A lot of people nowadays do very early. They do part of their PhD, for instance, abroad. But I did my first PhD and postdoc back in my native Sicily, in southern Italy. But soon after that, I decided to move to the UK, where I pursued another postdoc position and then a job in the research innovation in Oxford University spin-off company, which has become very successful now. Then I moved to Turkey, as it's called now, for 4 years with a Marie Curie fellowship, which was a fantastic experience. I will tell you more later on. Subsequently, I moved to Austria, where I was the recipient of the Lise Meitner Fellowship for 2 years. And finally, I returned to the UK, where I'm calling you today from. In terms of motivation, there are maybe two things I would like to say, drawing from my own experience. One is that looking back, I don't feel I've never really moved simply for getting a better job. In fact, life, my career prospect was already quite promising, if you want, when I was back in Italy. I've always moved, and I've ended up moving quite a bit in the end, primarily for personal reasons, because I followed my values and what I really loved at the time. I wanted to share this because when it comes to big decisions in life, I find that it's often very useful to bring things into perspective in a way and consider alongside your legitimate professional aspirations also, hand in hand with your affection, your family, so your values and your friends. Also, because being in a high-powered profession, being like an international researcher, as apparently, if you want, on the surface, a glamorous lifestyle, going to international conferences, publishing in journal, or if you want, doing a podcast like today. But often that comes with frustrations, and a lot of people pay a high price also in terms of mental health. So, what I'm trying to say is that I found very important to have a safety net always around me to keep me afloat when things were difficult. And that comes if you have, make those decisions also in light of the people you love around you.
So you said that you've never used like mobility for your research career, but how then in other ways? How has moving across borders shaped your career path and personal development?
Yeah, in fact, as a matter of fact, I've used mobility more. So they went hand in hand to an extent, my research career, but also my personal development. And I'm so very grateful of the many opportunities I've been given in this respect. I'm now thinking particularly of the Lise Meitner Fellowship by the Austrian Science Fund, but especially the European Commission's Marie Curie actions. In particular, I used the what is now called the postdoctoral fellowship. At the time was the individual fellowship, which brought me to Turkey, which was a fantastic experience. Perhaps a destination that wouldn't strike the listener now as the most attractive in terms of research and innovation. But in fact, Istanbul was the setting for me to work with a world-leading polymer chemist, Professor Yusuf Yaji, who has now sadly passed away. He taught me so much about polymer chemistry, and we implemented a fantastic project to tackle a terrible rare genetic disease affecting children, which is called the Niemann-Pick disease type C. Really a fantastic experience professionally and humanly as well. On a personal level, I also, very fond of the Turkish culture. I'm very grateful also the Turkish funding system for research innovation. I'm very grateful to TÜBİTAK. They are a really great and professional organization making the most of the association to Horizon Europe. So as I said, very grateful of all those opportunities that made possible my moving around across countries. But also looking back, perhaps the thing I'm most grateful for is the opportunity to get to know a culture so different to mine, and yet so deeply fascinating in many ways. I ended up actually learning quite a bit of the language of Turkish and made great friends there, and I love going back whenever possible.
Good. And so you initially also partially answered my next question. So about the biggest opportunities that international mobility creates for researchers, but maybe something else you would like to tell.
Yeah, I mean, as I've already mentioned, Marie Curie action was instrumental for my professional and personal development, which also led me to the current position where there is now a strong international dimension, if you want. And it's impossible to overestimate the impact that Marie Curie actions and be part of the Marie Curie Alumni Association, which I will mention in a moment, have had on my personal journey. It was the unique opportunity to experience creativity and also the freedom to implement a project I was very passionate about in the perfect possible setting, which was Istanbul at the time. But it was also instrumental in getting to know the Marie Curie Alumni Association, MCAA. For those listeners who are not familiar with MCAA, this is an international non-profit organization established and supported by the European Commission, but entirely run by volunteers. And it's a completely bottom-up approach as a philosophy there. It consists of over 23,000 members, and MCA is not just an association of researchers, but a real community. You get a real sense of community of researchers beyond research, if you want. Anyone who has benefited from Marie Curie Action Funding can become a member, and the membership is completely for free. So just a little bit of advertising there. They have a strong commitment to science policy, shaping science policy in Europe particularly. That led me eventually to join MCAA, to join UKRI, which is my current employer here in the UK.
And on the flip side, what are the main challenges?
Well, for me, the biggest challenge is been sometimes the sense of isolation, that can come with that kind of moving around, and the challenges that come also with mental health problems, with a lot of researchers' experience, so also aggravated by the sense of frustration for the lack of funding itself, lack of stability, and long-term funding.
Okay, something maybe more in general that will be spotted by other researchers that undergone mobility.
Yeah, I
And
think so.
yeah, but you spotted also about the MCAA and this science to policy, actually collaboration, these different activities between peers and helping out to each other, probably, of course, as usually it is inside the communities. How do you see institutions and policymakers supporting researchers better in overcoming these different challenges, especially regarding mobility? So we think about this not science for policy, but for policy for science from this perspective.
Yeah, we're currently seeing how we are shaping the next framework program, and both Marie Curie Action and the European Research Council add, if you want, two jewels in the crown of bottom-up independent research in Europe. They have both been promised more funds, and this is definitely a good news already in the research community. We definitely need more money to fund more excellent research in Europe, and that goes unfunded at the moment. At the same time, I think there's still more scope for making European funding more attractive for the host institutions. I think that's something that we often don't talk about, to incentivize institutions to engage more in Horizon Europe, perhaps with more heads they can draw money and resources from. Finally, I think, and also in terms of my own experience, we all need to be enablers, really, of a more diverse career trajectories for researchers across the board. The research innovation community is a very complex ecosystem that requires a plethora of different skills and professions. So I think it's very important to say that researchers can find very satisfying and fulfilling jobs in their career outside the lab as well. And that has been my experience as well.
Good. And mobility often means building networks, and you've already mentioned some of them. How has it influenced your collaborations and professional relations?
Well, as an international researcher, I've ended up learning a couple of languages, but that is only a metaphor, if you want, about the our capacity to bridge between the natural sciences and the humanities, and our capacity to embrace various cultures, various ideas. That becomes, in a way, the second nature of being an international researcher. And I think we need more and more people nowadays who are able to work across borders, to build trusting relationship with everyone. And in doing so, not only we as a community contribute to advancing science, but in a way, we also become a sort of de facto effective diplomatic actors. Some people exercising a sort of soft power in the community. Since 2019, and that was an experience I was first-hand involved, really, the association, the Marie Curie Alumni Association, has been very active also in the space of science diplomacy through the organization of various sessions and at our annual flagship conference, for instance, but also in other fora of high level across the world.
Good. Uh, no, everything fine. Looking ahead, what advice would you give to early career researchers considering mobility as part of their path? I would say, as a mandatory path of part of their path.
I mean, my top sort of piece of advice is simply just go for it. Mobility makes you grow as a person, not just as a researcher. I know that change can be scary and uncertainty can frighten people. I mean, it's frighten everyone, but maybe some people more than others. So make a plan to achieve your goal. It doesn't have to be a mobility for life. It can be just for a couple of years. I cannot promise it would be an easy journey, but at least for my experience, for experience of people around me, it will probably be a transformative experience for your life.
And finally, how do you imagine the future of research mobility in Europe? What trends or changes you think there can be, especially when you are now an NCP for ERC in UK? Maybe from this perspective, also something.
Yes, I mean, I've been a researcher for most of my life. I remain an academic at heart. So I'm a strong advocate for bottom-up, curiosity-led research. And I think it's crucial that we preserve that freedom of research for individuals getting the Marie Curie actions, and also, of course, the ERC, which is a more powerful tool, if you want, to choose their own research teams without having to align necessarily with predefined EU policy. So it is to strengthen also our democracies and to create a future that is more inclusive, more prosperous, and hopefully also more peaceful for us all.
Hopefully, this is a fine note to end our interview. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Daria, very much. It was a great pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the EURAXESS Smart Talks podcast.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode and can't wait to share more with you next time.
You can follow us and find more episodes on the EURAXESS portal, our social media profiles, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
This episode was prepared by hosts Daria Aksionova and Jovan Aranjelovic, editor Isar Peer, and is dedicated in memoriam of Professor Miroslav Trajanovic.